They didn't see the tears you wiped away in silence. They didn't see the nights you lay awake, questioning your worth, praying for peace in a house that had become a battlefield of passive aggression and emotional neglect. See, when people talk about suffering, they talk about bruises you can see, scars you can touch. But the deepest wounds, they're the ones no one sees. The ones that echo in your mind when the room is quiet. The ones that make you question if you're the problem, when in fact, you were just caught in the storm of someone else's broken soul. That's the thing about narcissists. They're loud when they love bomb, but silent when they destroy. They gaslight, twist, manipulate, and somehow make you feel like the villain in your own story. And you stay. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong. You believed in love. You believed in loyalty. You believed in them. But let me tell you something they won't. You were never the weak one in that room. You were the light. You were the stability. You were the one trying to hold the pieces together while they shattered everything in their path just to feel powerful. And that kind of strength, that silent suffering, that's not weakness, that's endurance, that's patience. That's love stretched thin over broken promises and unspoken apologies. You walked on eggshells so long your feet forgot what solid ground felt like. You smiled when your soul screamed. You shrank your spirit to make them feel big. You gave them every ounce of your energy, hoping they'd see your worth, hoping they'd choose you, the real you, not the version they wanted to control. But they never did. And you kept waiting, kept hoping, kept loving. And that's where the suffering became silent, because no one saw the fight inside you. No one knew how loud the loneliness could be in a room where you were no longer seen or heard. No one heard the apologies you whispered into your pillow for things that weren't your fault. And still, you stayed. Why? Because you're a believer. Because you saw potential. Because you thought love could fix it. Because deep down, all you ever wanted was to be loved the way you loved them. But here's what I want you to hear clearly. That silence, that suffering, it wasn't your forever. It was your awakening. They didn't break you. They revealed you. They pulled back the curtain and showed you what you were really made of. Not a doormat, not a weakling, not someone desperate for love, but a warrior, a soul forged in fire, someone who stayed silent, not out of fear, but out of hope. But even hope has a limit. Even the strongest heart can't beat in a cage. And one day, without shouting, without warning, without giving them the satisfaction of drama, you left. And that's the day the suffering ended. That's the day silence turned into power. Because silence doesn't mean defeat. Sometimes silence is your revolution, your peace, your rebirth. But here's what they never expected. They never expected you to wake up. They were so sure of their grip on you, so confident you'd stay, so certain that their version of love conditional, manipulative, one-sided was enough to keep you begging for scraps. But they underestimated something powerful. They underestimated what happens when someone who's been broken heals. When someone who's been quiet finds their voice. When someone who's been invisible remembers their worth. You didn't leave in rage. You didn't slam the door. You didn't scream or make a scene. You just stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped hoping, and you chose you. That choice, though quiet, shook their world more than any fight ever could. Because narcissists don't fear anger, they feed on chaos. What they fear is indifference. What they can't stand is being forgotten. And when you walked away, you gave them the one thing they never expected, silence that meant peace. Now, don't get me wrong, leaving wasn't easy. You had to fight every urge to go back, to answer that message, to believe them when they said, I've changed. But deep down, you knew the truth. Real change doesn't beg for another chance. It shows up ready. You started to heal, not with loud declarations, but with quiet acts of self-love. You laughed again, real, deep, from the soul laughter. You took long walks and finally breathed without fear. You remembered who you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before the weight of someone else's brokenness was placed on your back. And let me tell you something they noticed. Oh, they noticed. Because narcissists don't miss you. They miss your energy. They miss the control. They miss the version of you that was dimmed down to fit into their shadow. But the version of you that left, that version can't be controlled. That version doesn't beg. That version is too busy building, healing, rising. So now, when they look back, they'll say, she changed. He switched up. They forgot me. But let the record show you didn't forget. You forgave. You forgave them, not for their sake, but for yours. Because you knew that holding on to their poison would only slow your healing. You let go of the need for an apology. You let go of the fantasy that they'd one day understand. You let go of the hope that they'd finally see you. And in doing so, you saw yourself. You saw the version of you that survived, the version that stayed kind in the face of cruelty, the version that still had love to give this time to yourself. Because here's the truth. No one tells you the most powerful move you can make is to choose peace over chaos, self-respect over validation, healing over history. You didn't just walk away from them. You walked toward yourself, and that is the end of silent suffering. That is the beginning of your comeback. So let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them tell their version of the story. You got nothing to prove because you know what you endured. You know the strength it took, and you know finally that you were never the problem. You were the blessing they couldn't recognize, the peace they tried to break, the light they tried to dim. But now you shine. Now you rise. Now you live. There comes a moment in every storm when the thunder quiets down just enough for you to hear your own breath, when the lightning stops flashing long enough for your eyes to adjust and finally see the wreckage around you, and more importantly, the wreckage inside you. That's the moment of awakening. Not loud, not glorious, not triumphant, but still, it's powerful. It begins in silence, in the middle of the night. Alone, you sit there and feel it, that dull ache. That's no longer just pain. It's realization. You've been loving someone who never loved you back in the way you deserve. Let that settle. You gave and gave and gave. Not because you were weak, not because you were foolish, but because your heart was full, because you believed in love, because you saw the best in them when they couldn't even see it themselves. And what did they do? They twisted it, took your kindness and called it naivety, took your forgiveness and labeled it weakness, took your loyalty and saw it as a guarantee. But something inside you, something finally said, enough. This awakening doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, a soft but sharp voice that says, you are worth more than this. It doesn't beg for revenge. It doesn't crave drama. It craves peace. And peace begins when the lies no longer confuse you. When you stop excusing the pain just because you're used to it. When you finally understand that love shouldn't cost you your self-respect, that loyalty should never require your silence, that being with someone shouldn't mean abandoning yourself. And oh, how they noticed. Because narcissists, they sense that shift. They feel the difference when your energy no longer feeds them, when your presence doesn't orbit around them, when your eyes stop shining with hope and start focusing inward. They notice and they panic because they never thought you'd wake up. They thought they had you on a leash made of your own empathy. They thought you were so broken down that you'd never gather the pieces, but you did. You are. And in that awakening, something incredible happens. You don't just see them differently, you see yourself differently. You realize you've always had the strength, that every time you wiped your own tears, every time you bit your tongue to keep the peace, every time you kept walking despite the weight that wasn't weakness, that was resilience. That was power. Let me tell you something. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. An awakening means making a choice, not just to leave, but to never again return to who you were with them. And yes, they'll try. They'll come back with the charm, the apologies, the promises, the I miss you, the I see it now. But don't let your heart forget what your mind has learned. Don't romanticize the struggle just because you survived it. That was not love. That was survival. And now it's time to thrive. You owe no one an explanation for choosing peace, for choosing you, for waking up. The people who truly love you will never require you to dim your light just so they can shine. The real ones, they celebrate your awakening. They water your growth. They love you loud, proud, and clear. So walk forward, not with bitterness, but with boldness. Walk like someone who's been to war with themselves and won. That's the awakening. That's the shift. And baby, once your eyes are open, you never go back to sleep. You didn't just wake up one day and leave. No, it wasn't a snap decision. It was a slow burn, a long road, 1,000 silent screams that no one heard but you. Every time you tried to speak your truth, they flipped the script. Every time you cried for help, they said you were too sensitive. Every time you asked for love, they gave you just enough to keep you starving, just enough to make you stay. But something inside you, it refused to die. There was a voice, faint at first, quiet like a whisper in a hurricane. But it was there. At first, you ignored it. You had been taught to. You had been conditioned to distrust your own gut, your own feelings, your own sanity. Maybe I am overreacting, you told yourself. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe it's me. But that voice didn't quit, because deep down in the core of your being, something sacred stirred. It was your spirit. It remembered who you were before the gaslighting, before the manipulation, before the mask they wore ever slipped. And when that awakening began, it didn't start with rage. No, it started with clarity. You stopped arguing. You stopped begging. You stopped over-explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped sacrificing your peace for their comfort. You started to see. You started to remember what love was supposed to feel like and what it definitely wasn't. Love wasn't supposed to be a maze. It wasn't supposed to be a cycle of punishment and reward. It wasn't supposed to be a weapon they used to control you. And you realized something powerful. You had been loyal to confusion, loyal to pain, loyal to someone who was never loyal to your growth, your joy, your light. So you did the unthinkable. You began to shift, not loudly, not with a grand announcement, but quietly, in your spirit. You started choosing yourself in small ways. You started saying no, not to them, but to the lies you had internalized. Lies that told you you were unworthy, lies that said you were too broken to be loved, lies that made you settle for survival when you were born for abundance. This was the beginning of your awakening. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't flashy, but it was sacred. It was a shift in posture, a change in vibration. And let me tell you something, the narcissist felt it. Oh, they felt it before you even said a word, because your silence became louder than your tears ever were. Your peace became more powerful than their chaos. Your detachment hit harder than any argument you could have thrown. You stopped dancing to their rhythm. You created your own music. You reconnected with your soul. And when you did, they panicked. Because narcissists don't lose control all at once. They lose it slowly in the moments you stop responding, in the moments you smile without their approval, in the moments you find joy without their permission. They saw it. The spark in your eye returning, the strength in your back straightening, the confidence in your voice rebuilding. And they hated it, not because they didn't love you, but because they couldn't own you anymore. But that wasn't your problem. Your journey wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about finally realizing you deserve something real. You deserve peace that didn't come at a cost. You deserve love that didn't keep score. You deserve to be seen, heard, and held, not just when it was convenient for them, but always. This awakening, it wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 small moments. It was choosing to walk away from the familiar hell for the unfamiliar peace. It was trading survival mode for soul revival. It was learning that freedom isn't found in someone else's arms, but in your own embrace. And with every step forward, the chains they put on you began to loosen. Not because they unlocked them, no, they never would, but because you realized you held the key all along. This is your rebirth, not the loud kind, not the kind that needs applause, but the kind that builds from the inside out, the kind that cannot be undone. You see, once your soul wakes up, you can't go back to sleep. You can't pretend you don't know your worth anymore. You can't keep shrinking just to fit someone else's comfort zone. You can't stay where love is weaponized and peace is a prize you have to earn. No, you rise now. You rise with quiet strength, with bold love, with deep wisdom, because the moment you chose yourself, the healing began. The war wasn't over, not yet, but you had just stepped into your power. And trust me, once a soul decides to heal, there is nothing more dangerous to a narcissist than a person who finally knows their worth. There comes a moment in every story where the veil falls and the truth stands bare. No more makeup, no more sweet-talking manipulation, no more pretending to be what they're not. That moment is when you see them for who they truly are. You see, when you're trapped in the cycle of a narcissist, everything feels like a performance. They're the star of the show, and you're just the spotlight, shining where they tell you, dimming when they say so. But what happens when the spotlight shifts? Breaking the illusion doesn't happen overnight. It starts with discomfort, a little voice that whispers, something isn't right. It starts with tears you can't explain, anxiety that lives in your chest like a second heartbeat. It starts when you realize love shouldn't feel like fear. That affection shouldn't be earned. That walking on eggshells isn't living, it's surviving. The narcissists, they weave a web carefully, methodically. They feed off your empathy, your kindness, your loyalty. They wear masks so well that sometimes even they forget who they really are. But not you. Deep down, even in your silence, you've always known you just needed the strength to admit it to yourself. One of the most dangerous illusions they create is that you are the problem. They will twist every truth, distort every fact until you question your own reality. They'll make you believe that you're too sensitive, too needy, too emotional. But let me tell you something powerful, and I want you to hold on to it. Your emotions are not weakness. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. Your compassion is not a liability, it's your superpower. And when you start to realize that, the illusion begins to crack. You start seeing how they manipulate people around you, charming them, gaslighting you. You start noticing how they never apologize unless it serves their agenda, how their love always comes with conditions. You start remembering all the times you were hurt and all the times they made you feel guilty for feeling pain. And it's in that moment, that sacred moment of awakening, where you begin to reclaim your mind. You stop making excuses for them. You stop blaming yourself. You stop accepting less. Let me tell you something real. The truth will always fight to be seen. No matter how tightly it's buried, no matter how long it's been hidden, truth has a heartbeat. And once you start listening to that beat, you're no longer under their spell. You begin to see their patterns, their tactics, their need for control. You notice the way they only show up when they need something, when they're losing grip on your soul. You realize that love, real love, doesn't drain you. It fills you. It doesn't make you shrink. It makes you grow. But that growth, it comes with pain. Because to break the illusion, you have to look at the entire picture, even the parts you painted over, with hope. You have to admit that maybe, just maybe, they never loved you the way you loved them. Maybe they loved how you made them feel. Maybe they loved the reflection of themselves in your eyes, but not you. That's a hard pill to swallow. But it's also the medicine that starts your healing. Denzel Washington once said, "Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship." And he was right. Comfort kept you in that place. Fear of starting over kept you there. The hope that they change, that maybe tomorrow would be better, that kept you in chains. But hardship, that's where warriors are born. That's where clarity lives. The moment you saw the narcissist for what they were, not a partner, but a manipulator, not a lover, but an actor, was the moment you stepped into your power. You're not bitter, you're wiser, you're not angry, you're awakened. And now they can't sell you the same lies. Now their tricks don't work. Now their silence isn't terrifying, it's freeing. Because guess what? You don't need their approval anymore. You don't need their validation. You don't need their version of love that costs you your peace. You are finally free to choose you. And once the illusion is broken, once the glass shatters, you can never unsee the truth. That's where healing begins. That's where rebirth begins. That's where your comeback begins. Let them keep pretending. Let them keep performing. You're done with illusions. You're ready for truth. There comes a momenta, a quiet, soul-shifting moment when the curtain falls, the lights dim, the spotlight fades, and you finally see the narcissist for who they truly are. Not the image, not the illusion, not the mask they wear so well, but the cold, manipulative truth underneath. It doesn't happen suddenly, no. It creeps in like a slow dawn. It's the weight in your chest that won't lift, the way you find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. It's the tears that fall without a reason, and the fear of speaking your truth because you already know they won't hear you. They never have. You kept thinking it was your fault, didn't you? You thought maybe if you loved them harder, gave more, shrunk yourself just a little bit more, maybe then they'd finally see you, appreciate you, care for you like you cared for them. But they didn't want love, not real love. They wanted admiration, control, supply. You were never a partner to them. You were a mirror, a source of endless validation. And the moment you stop feeding their ego, they punish you for it with silence, with withdrawal, with subtle jabs that cut deeper than any scream ever could. But here's the truth, they never really saw you. Not the depth of your soul, not the dreams you whispered into darkness, not the sacrifices you made in silence. They only saw what you gave them. You were never a person to them. You were a resource. And still, you stayed. You stayed because you believed in the potential. You believed in the version of them they showed you at the beginning, the one who said all the right things, who looked into your eyes like you were the only person in the world, the version that was never real. You weren't foolish for believing it. You were human. That's what narcissists do best. They mimic love, they perform it, they study you, learn your fears, your hopes, your vulnerabilities, and use them as tools to bind you to them. But they don't feel the love they give. It's calculated, it's transactional. And when you no longer serve their narrative, they discard you, or worse, they keep you close just to watch you suffer. But you've started waking up. And waking up isn't always beautiful. It's messy, it's painful. It's like tearing off a blindfold that's been on so long, the light burns your eyes. But with every truth you face, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Breaking the illusion is an act of rebellion. Is when you finally say, no more. No more gaslighting. No more manipulation. No more dimming your light to make them feel powerful. You start seeing every red flag you ignored every time your intuition screamed, and you silenced it out of love. You remember the apologies you gave just to keep the peace, the dreams you let go of just to keep them happy, the parts of yourself you buried just to survive. That's not love. That's survival. But not anymore. Because now you're done surviving. Now you're choosing to live. It takes courage to look truth in the eye and not flinch, to admit that someone you loved didn't love you back the way you deserved, that they exploited your goodness, your patience, your grace. It hurts. Oh, it hurts like hell. But from that pain, something incredible is born. Clarity. You stop blaming yourself. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop waiting for them to change, and instead you change. You become the hero of your own story. Because the truth is, they never broke you. They tried with their lies, their silence, their manipulation. They tried to make you doubt your own mind, question your own memories. They tried to wear you down until there was nothing left of the person you were before them. But you're still here. You're still standing. And every step you take away from that illusion, you're stepping into a new kind of power. The kind that doesn't need anyone's approval. The kind that doesn't beg to be seen. The kind that knows, I am enough. They will come back. Don't doubt that. When they feel your absence, when they realize their grip has loosened, when they sense that you found something they never gave you peace, they will return with apologies, with sweet words, with false promises. Don't fall for it, because they don't miss you. They miss your supply. They miss your energy. They miss having someone to control. And when they realize the illusion has shattered, when they realize you see them clearly, when their words don't move you anymore, that's when their power dissolves. Because narcissists can't survive in the light of truth. And you, my friend, you are the light now. You are no longer their reflection. You are your own. Whole, healing, honest. Let them spin their stories. Let them rewrite the past. You don't have to fight to prove your side anymore. You know what happened, and that's enough. You pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud too. That's a part of it. this illusion, this pain, this awakening, it's your rain, but it's also your cleansing. It's washing away every lie, every manipulation, every false version of love you were sold. Now, you get to rebuild in truth, on freedom, on self-respect. And when they see that glow in your eyes, the one they tried to dim, they'll know the illusion is gone and you are never going back. There comes a time when silence speaks louder than screams, when walking away carries more power than staying to argue, beg, or explain. That moment is the turning point. The moment you realize that your healing isn't found in their apology, it's found in your decision. You see, narcissists never believe you'll leave. Not really. They think you'll keep taking the blame, shrinking yourself, walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. They feed off your empathy, twist your loyalty, and confuse your love for weakness. But what they forget is that the human spirit can only bend for so long before it breaks free. Denzel Washington once said, "You pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud too. That's a part of it." And you did. You weathered the storm, you swallowed the pain, you stayed longer than you should have. But now you're not just surviving. You're walking out of the fire that was meant to consume you, and you're coming out refined. Because walking away, that's not weakness. That's power. That's strength. That's growth. They never thought you'd leave. They thought you'd stay trapped in that cycle, explaining yourself, second-guessing yourself, trying to fix what they broke and blamed you for. But you stopped showing up for the performance. You stopped rehearsing lines in your head before every conversation. You stopped apologizing for your truth. And the moment you chose to walk away, you didn't just leave them behind, you reclaimed yourself. Let's be clear. It's not easy. You'll doubt yourself. You'll feel guilty. You'll miss the good times. That's natural. But don't confuse missing the connection with needing to go back to the chaos. Nostalgia is a liar sometimes. It highlights the warmth and erases the fire that burned you, but deep down, you remember. You remember the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the days you questioned your worth, the version of yourself you barely recognized in the mirror. You remember what it felt like to be invisible in your own life. But now, the script has changed. You're not chasing closure anymore. You're not waiting for validation. You've realized their silence is their answer. Their avoidance is their confession. Their indifference, that's all the closure you'll ever need. Because your healing, it's not their responsibility. It's yours. You've stepped into a new chapter, one where your peace is protected, where your boundaries aren't negotiable, and your worth is no longer up for debate. And maybe, just maybe, one day they'll look back and realize you were the best thing they ever had. But by then, you'll be too far gone to care. See, the narcissist operates on control. But the moment you stop reacting, stop engaging, stop feeding their ego, that's the moment you become free. You take back every piece of yourself they tried to dim, and you walk with your head held high, not because you're bitter, but because you've healed. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning. It means no longer letting the pain dictate your present. And let me tell you something else. The moment they realize you've truly walked away, it'll shake them. Not because they miss you, but because they lost control over you. That's when the gaslighting turns into guilt tripping. That's when the love bombing resumes. That's when they try to become the person you always needed, but only because they see you thriving without them. But here's where you have to stay strong. Don't open the door you had the strength to close. Don't answer the call you prayed to stop hearing. You're not who you were before. You're wiser now, stronger now, You know your worth now. Don't just aspire to make a living, aspire to make a difference. And walking away, that's a difference. That's a message to the world and to yourself that you refuse to live in a place where you aren't seen, heard, or valued. So keep walking, walk toward your peace, walk toward your purpose, walk toward people who see your light, and don't try to dim it. You may have been broken, but you're not defeated. You may have cried, but now you're standing tall. You may have left, but what you walked into is far greater than what you left behind. The narcissist thought you'd never leave, but you did. And in doing so, you didn't just save your life, you took it back.